So in today's video, I'm going to show you an incredibly simple way of painting autumn trees in Procreate. This doesn't require following a sketch, and you'll get a unique tree each time. This time, I'm using the Backrun paper texture to get this watercolor effect. And for the brushes, I'm just using the ones in the regular watercolor kit. And to start painting, I'm going to grab the soft Neptune quill brush and a pretty saturated yellow-orange color. And I'm going to create this kind of structure where I'm mostly moving the brush side to side like this. And we're painting the tree sort of from back to front. So this is actually the inside of the tree. So I'm going to darken it using the hue, saturation, and brightness. Next, I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to change my color to just a lighter version of the original color. And I'm going to do sort of what I did in the first step, but this one is going to be a little bit more, I guess, kind of serpentine, kind of curving around like this. And I'm going to try to leave a couple of gaps. There we go. So I've left these empty spaces, and those are kind of like holes into the interior of the tree. And at this point, I need to start thinking about how the light in the scene is hitting the tree. So I'm going to imagine it's coming from this direction. So it makes sense that these areas, kind of on the outer edges, are going to get more sunlight. So to get that effect, I'm going to change the color again to a lighter version, maybe a little bit more kind of yellowish and warm. And I'm going to scribble kind of on those areas. And next, I'm going to brighten the color again. And this is going to be the maximum kind of highlights. And I'm going to use this one very, very sparingly. Next, I'm going to change my brush to the water blender brush. And maybe around 20 or 30%, I'm going to go in there and just soften all these kind of interior areas up. But where the front side of the tree meets these kind of holes in the tree, I'm not really going to blend that boundary. I'm just blending where the highlights kind of fade to the shadows. Now at this point, everything we've done so far is just on these two layers. So here's the front of the tree, and then here's the back or inside of the tree. And I'm going to merge those together onto one layer. Then I'm going to grab the eraser brush, set to the fine liner pen, and I'm going to use it at around 10% size. And I'm going to go along the whole border of the tree here and give it a kind of rough, sharp, sort of nervous edge. And areas like this, where there is kind of the gap or hole in the tree, I'm going to erase it so it sort of cuts in. So based on the silhouette of the tree, these areas are sort of inset. And this is totally up to you, but I usually like the bottom of the tree to be pretty flat. Now in a couple of kind of boring areas, if you want to make them more interesting, you can add splits. And that's pretty simple. I'm just going to start kind of in the silhouette of the tree and kind of work my way out to the edge. And then I'm going to round it over. And it just creates an interesting break in the foliage. And I'm going to do this in a few places. And once the canopy of the tree is pretty well roughed out like this, we can move on and finally paint the trunk. And that's going to be on its own layer, so we'll make a new layer above the canopy. For the color, I'm going to use a dark bluish gray tone. And for the brush, I recommend using the hard edge brush. And of course, I'm going to add the trunk on the bottom here. And maybe one of the key tricks I use to give this a little bit of texture is I'm going to do these small, kind of swirly, sort of snake-like brush strokes. It just gives it an interesting texture. Then I'll do a few branches that start quite wide and then taper off as they go into the canopy. And then up here, where we have these holes in the canopy, I'm going to add a little bit of random trunk kind of showing through. And there's no logic to these at all. They're just more or less randomly placed in there. Now once the larger branches have been roughed out, I'm going to choose a darker version of our branch color and a smaller brush size. And I'm going to go all over this and add a bunch of tiny little branches. Now these branches look good, but they're a little bit flat. So to fix that, I've got a little bit of an interesting trick. So right now there's two layers. Here's the branches and here's the foliage. I'm going to make sure the foliage layer is selected. Then I'm going to use the eraser brush, again set to the fine liner pen, and I can erase through the foliage layer. Now what's interesting is if I erase through the foliage behind where the branches are, so I'll erase this area. You can see if I turn off the branches, I've just erased a hole. This has the effect of making the branch look kind of brighter. So I'm going to erase through this way wherever I think the branches are catching a little bit of that sunlight. And this process is pretty intuitive. I think the main thing to just keep in mind is leave a little bit of shadow on every branch, especially towards the top end of it. Now for this tree in particular, and since the light is coming from this angle, it kind of makes sense to me that some of the branch down here is catching a highlight. So to add that, I'm going to make sure the branch layer is selected. Then I'm going to use the selection tool set to freehand. And I'm just going to make an interesting shape like that. I think I won't even feather it out. Then I'll go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and just brighten it. There we go, that looks pretty good. Now at this point, the tree is really starting to come together. I noticed that the trunk here is a little bit rounded and I'd like it to be flat. So I'm going to make sure that layer is selected, and I'm just going to erase it and kind of cut it off. There we go. And once you're happy with how everything looks so far, I recommend just pinching it together and merging it onto one layer. Now all that's left to do is add some leaf details, and those are going to be on their own layer above everything. I'm going to change my brush to the fine liner pen, and this takes a little bit of time, but the key thing is use the color picker here to grab a local color and then draw a couple of little leaves, kind of poking just beyond the silhouette of the canopy. And as you go along the edge, just make random, silly kind of leaf shapes. And once in a while, you'll have to adjust the color because the area of that tree is, of course, different. Now, once we've done this kind of along the perimeter of the canopy, don't forget to add it to these inner kind of holes as well. And after these kind of inner areas are filled in, I'm going to go over the whole tree and add some leaves very, very sparingly in these emptier spaces. Now, this tree could be totally done at this point, but if you've seen some autumn trees just before they fully change color, you have a couple different shades of orange, red, and green in the foliage. So if you want to get that effect, it's pretty easy. I'm just going to once again kind of merge everything together onto one layer, and I'm going to use the selection tool set to freehand, and I'm going to just select kind of random areas like this, and I'll feather them out. Then I can go to the hue, saturation, and brightness, and I can shift the hue, so towards the top, usually it's a little redder. There we go. And then towards the bottom, I'm going to make it kind of greenish. And just in case the final tree ends up being a little bit unbalanced, you can use the arrow tool set to warp, and you can actually kind of bend and warp the tree so it has maybe a little more character and also a little bit better balance. And just like that, this simple autumn tree illustration is all done. And here's a closer look at the final result. And that pretty much wraps it up. Please give this video a like if you think I've earned it. And if you like this type of workflow or process and you want to paint a whole scene, check out my desert landscape painting tutorial up here.